Okay, good evening. I'd like to call to order the March 8th meeting of the Public Service Commission. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll call the roll. Chairman Costick is excused. Kennedy's here. Schmidtke?
Present, sir.
And Reilly's absent. Pusdesris is absent. Zywida?
I'm here.
Here. And Nadeau?
Here.
Okay. Next, approval of the agenda. Everybody's had a chance to look at it. Derek, did you want to exclude the dust bond at this time, or do you want to discuss that?
We can remove it if you want, and I can give an explanation if there's a motion to approve of the amended budget or the amended agenda. I'm sorry. So if there's a motion to approve the amended budget agenda with the removal of action item A, I can give an explanation about why we would be removing that.
So we're not going to be ready to approve the dust control award at this time, and so I'd like a motion to remove action item A from the agenda.
So moved. I second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we've removed the action item A. Okay, with that, now could we have an approval of the agenda as submitted,
As amended.
as amended?
So you actually approved the agenda already, and I'm assuming you approved it with the amendment of
Okay.
the removal of action item A. I
Okay,
guess now
so
I
we've-
can explain a little bit
All
why.
right, so we've approved the agenda with the removal of action item A.
And I had talked to Phil earlier today about removing action item A. The reason being, I have had conversations over the past week and a half or so with the county about the load limits on the bridge. It looks like the load limits are going to be adjusted, and if they're adjusted to the extent that's being discussed, we might have the ability to be able to get the dust bond product back onto the island. There's still some pricing that we'll have to go over with them to make sure that it's affordable and meets our budget, but the action item that was placed on the agenda to approve the extension with our calcium chloride provider, that might still continue to be an option, but it looks like dust bond might be an option, so I would rather wait on the extension of that contract until we confirm whether or not dust bond is going to be something we can bind for this year or not, and it looks like it might be an option. So
Okay,
Yeah, Derek, that calcium chloride or whatever it is they put out is just a waste of money, to be truthful with you. As soon as they put it down, and if it rains, it's all washed away.
well, I know that the preference has always been to go with the dust bond, and to your point, I think the dust bond has proven itself to be more effective. So we want to exhaust every opportunity that we can to utilize that product, and it looks like there still could be the possibility that could be available for us for this year. So.
Oh,
okay, moving on. Everybody's had a chance to look at their packet. Receive a motion for approval of the minutes from February 8th, 2022. John, you were at the meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so I was not at the meeting, Les was not at the meeting, so only the three of you were at the meeting, so we'll need a motion and
Move
approval.
the approve.
support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes of February 8th are approved. And in your packet were the bills and vouchers. Anybody have any questions on those? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to approve the bills and vouchers.
So moved. I'll second it.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? They're approved. And the statement of revenues and expenditures, that's just to be looked at and filed if there's not any questions. Hearing none, we'll have those filed. Then we have the treasurer's report. If there's no questions about the treasurer's report, I'll accept a motion to approve them.
I will make that motion to approve the treasurer's report.
Support.
Moved and supported. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And so they've been approved. Public comment? Well, we have two members of the public here. Do either of you wish to speak now? If you want to speak, will you come up to the mic, Bill, so we can all hear you and get it on record?
At this point in the meeting, I'm not sure I'm appropriate. I'd like to ask a couple of questions about millage, but you have an agenda to go through somewhere, and I don't know how that fits in right now. That's what's got me bothered. If you
Well,
would, I want to be appropriate.
we're going to be discussing the next year's budget,
That might be a good point to tell you.
but I don't think that includes, are you talking about the road millage?
That and the sewage treatment plant.
Excuse me?
Sewage treatment plant, the two of them. Those are the two questions.
Well, Derek, when do you think it would be appropriate?
Probably public comment.
Okay.
There isn't another opportunity for public comment on our agenda, so probably now would be best.
Okay, I was just trying to serve propriety, I suppose.
Sure, that's okay, go ahead.
I'm Bill Heil. I live on East River. I personally have sort of a sense of intuition that we have to be very careful with money in this township. We have a lot of things to spend money on and not as much money coming in as we'd like to do. And as my memory serves me, the road millage is 2 or 3 mills. And isn't the sewage treatment plant about 5?
I don't think that's accurate. Are you talking about the proposed millage?
I'm talking about what it will take to if we voted for the roads and we put the sewage treatment plant addition on there, what total millage would it be for those two projects?
So the proposal that came out of the DPS commission was I believe 1.3 or 1.4 mils for the roads. The
Yeah.
sewer treatment plant, based upon a $10 million bond, is right around 0.9, something along those lines.
Only 0.9.
0.9, yeah.
I was way off on that.
25-year bond at $10 million.
Okay, then
Yeah,
that's another thing. You got it to go longer. That's good.
correct.
We've talked about a lot of different possible mixtures.
Right.
We were at,
Yeah.
I believe that's true.
Well, I remember there was a time. Yeah.
So combined, you're at like, what is that, 2.2, something along those lines.
I'm fine with that.
2.3, yeah.
I was just concerned about cash flow.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes.
Greg Carmazin, resident Clinton Township, homeowner, taxpayer, 21228 East River Road. I wanted to follow up on Bill's comments, questions about the road millage. One of the things that I think a lot of people on the island have wanted to understand for a long time is what kind of commitment Wayne County is really making to fixing the roads on the island. Now, I know, and this is obviously something for a long time it's been misunderstood, that there is not a road millage that Wayne County collects for road maintenance and bridge maintenance. And that's something that I think you guys, this commission, has done a great job over the years of trying to educate the public about that. And unfortunately, that doesn't seem to have sunk in with a lot of people. They still are under the impression that their property taxes are going to road millages. But on the other hand, they do pay vehicle registration fees and they do pay gas tax. And we know that obviously that adds up to a lot of money when you look at the number of vehicles that are on the island and the amount of the miles that people travel. So certainly islanders are entitled to their fair share of money from Act 51 that comes back to the county. And one of the questions that I have is, I think it would be helpful when we're talking about a millage to understand some of these numbers so that we can talk to people about what a net gain would be if we actually did increase the road millage on gross sale. So, for example, what exactly is the allocation that Wayne County gets from MDOT, the state of Michigan, for townships? Because they do get a dedicated amount of money from Act 51 that can only go to maintenance on township roads, is what I understand. And I was wondering if you've looked at that number or know what that number is and have an idea of what kind of commitment Wayne County has had both historically to the township and prospectively in the future to the township. So we'd have an idea of how much we could expect to come to the township from the state through the county, and that if we're going to add a road millage onto the tax bill, that we know that we're not just offsetting money that we would have gotten anyways eventually through the county allocation. So again, my question is, historically, how much funding has the township gotten over, say, the last 5-10 years on average, and what do you expect going forward from the county in terms of the allocation from the state?
Okay, I can't answer those questions specifically with dollar amounts off the top of my head. I can speak in generalities. You're aware of how Wayne County formulates their needs assessment for the money they get. In other words, the money flows in from the state to the county, and then Wayne County has what they call a needs assessment, and they rank from 1 to 100 what they're going to do as far as distributing that money. And if memory serves me correctly, the highest we ever got was number 75, maybe, on that list at one point in time. That was several years ago. And I think that year they did maybe 20. So we were not even close to getting money distributed according to need. Now, we have received money from Wayne County sporadically for various projects. Like they partnered with us on the West River Road paving after the water main project was done on West River Road, on part of that road. They've committed to us. I don't know if it's in writing, but they're committing to a 3-year restoration of Meridian. 2 years ago, they paved a section of East River Road. We didn't even know they were going to do it. We have continually gone to Wayne County to plead our case, and sometimes they respond, sometimes they don't. It's been extremely difficult, and so we've every nickel we've ever spent, we've always tried to get Wayne County's participation, at least on the major thoroughfare and crossroads in the township. I wish I could give you exact numbers. Derek, you might have more exact numbers than that, but it's been extremely frustrating. I certainly sympathize
I share
with that.
frustration because I myself have tried to research some of this by doing FOIA requests to MDOT and the Wayne County, just for example, on the county bridge, trying to actually get the true number of how much money was actually spent on that restoration project is still elusive to me. And finding the actual documentation that explains where the money actually came from is also something I'm having a hard time figuring out. I've heard, varying numbers. And I also know that the local bridge program that funds bridge projects is different than the Act 51 allocation for road millages. So, these are numbers that I would like to see more information on so that we can, if we get to the point where we're taking a millage to the voters, we can, show them, well, this is what's actually historically happened in the last, say, 10 years. Every year, this is roughly what we've gotten. And I get the point you're making about there's a needs assessment, but there's also a certain amount of money that the county gets that they can only spend on townships. And it's just a question of which townships they spend it on.
And how they spend it.
And how they spend it. But then, my understanding is when you're talking about needs, there's a little bit of subjectivity in that issue. And the same thing goes with the local bridge program. The regional bridge council gets involved in allocating, setting up priorities. So I think those numbers would be really helpful to to get so that, you know, we can, so the voters can really understand that if we are going to raise taxes, that it's going to be a net gain, because we're not only going to get the money that we would have gotten from Wayne County, but then we're going to add to it with additional money, and we're going to get more done. And that's something I think is going to be really important.
Well, I agree, and I think with this upcoming millage, we somewhat have a commitment that Wayne County's going to, was $1.3 million, something in that neighborhood, to spend on Meridian. The biggest hurdle we have had in the last two millage proposals was not so much determining how Wayne County was going to allocate the money, but just getting across to the township residents that these aren't our roads. In other words, they keep they're not our roads, so to speak. They're owned by Wayne County, and so fix the roads. I mean, we plead with them all we can to help out with us, and the millage that we have that generates the 200 and some thousand a year right now barely takes care of just basic maintenance on some of the roads.
Now, I just have one specific question on East River, since that's something I've been looking at for the last 56 years. And I will say that I can attest to the fact that the roads today are about as bad as they were in the early 70s when I was just starting to ride a bike on Grosse Hill. They're pretty bad. Although it might have been actually a little worse back then. I think the road East River was
Parkway.
wasn't East River wasn't it a little bit mounded back in the, you know, before they repaved it in the mid 70s?
Didn't they pave East River in the mid to late 80s? Is that
It's 70s when they did the big project.
They got a special millage that the people voted in, and you were just a young whippersnapper
Right,
then,
right,
and they paved all the roads on Grosse Hill.
right.
East River, West River, Ferry, Horse Mill, Bellevue, and the only one they didn't do was Macomb Street. So, and the contractor that had it was Ajax.
Right, yeah.
And Ajax said, well, I will do it for this amount of money. It didn't go out for bid. So the county started screaming and hollering it had to go out for bid. Well, it was almost double what Ajax would have done for it without a bid when they bid it. So, yeah, you're right, Carm. It's back then. We did all those roads, and it was a special thing that the people voted for because they had the mail people saying, well, we're not delivering mail anymore because it's tearing our trucks up. And
Bad, it really is. But specifically, the proposal that you've got on the table, what would you do on East River? Is this just a resurfacing? This isn't a total tear down to the base and rebuild. This is like a resurfacing type
a
project.
mill and resurface?
Okay, but that's not a
Total rebuild.
that's not a total rebuild.
The way that the proposal was written and the cost estimates came in, or the cost estimates that our engineers provided, it was a resurfacing from Manchester all the way to Horse Mill. So we all know there are certain stretches of East River Road that are in worse condition than others. You know, that's a budgetary estimate based upon that scope of work. That doesn't mean that scope of work can't be altered if there are certain stretches of East River Road that are beyond mill and fill.
But I don't think we were going to do that one section that was most recently done.
Well, I think the estimate was all the way from one end to the other,
I thought it was in
understanding
two sections.
that there were certain sections that are probably beyond mill and fill.
Okay.
You know, that would require a full depth replacement. It's a dollar figure to do that, knowing full well that there might be different scopes of work within that stretch that might require, you know, additional work.
I think you're going to have to do that in some places.
There are certain areas
There's
that
no
are
question
beyond
about
that.
it.
Yeah. So, okay, and then just a final thing. Of course, there are always rumors out there, but I've heard from a number of credible sources that there's quite a bit of discussion going on about the county bridge and those 5 piers that, of course, weren't repaired during the last maintenance project, and the load rating. And I just wanted to know if the township has heard any update about when we might hear if the load rating is going to be changed on the bridge, and what might be holding back the county from making a change in the load rating.
That would be Derek.
I was asked probably a week or so ago for for my input. The county asked for my input on the different users of the bridge and what kind of load limits we would need to operate our municipal services and also the majority of the contract work that happens, with the interest of trying to modify the load limits, but modify them only to the extent that we absolutely needed. I think the general idea is anything beyond what you absolutely need accelerates the deterioration of that bridge. So the adjustment, they're trying to determine the adjustment within the confines of what the engineers said is acceptable, but also minimize the load limit as much as they can to extend the longevity of that bridge. I don't know if that answers your question. I guess the second part to your question is when. I anticipate fairly shortly here that adjustment will take place, because that information was asked for about a week ago, with a planned adjustment moving forward, here fairly shortly.
Well, and that's good to hear. I would just offer that there's a bridge on the north end of the island that is pretty good at understanding how to minimize wear and tear on bridges. And one thing you might consider is having a requirement that those heavy trucks actually have to have all their wheels down and have to come over at no more than, say, 15 miles an hour, perhaps be guided coming over, so that you don't have speeding, and which accelerates that, exacerbates that wear and tear. There are ways that you can minimize the impact of those heavy trucks through coordination with when those trucks come over and clearing the bridge, perhaps.
I think the county they're very interested in maintaining the longevity of that bridge and doing what they possibly can to minimize the wear and tear on it. Now, in saying that, the arrangement with the county bridge, as you know, is very different than the arrangement with the toll bridge as it relates to control.
Right.
The toll bridge is much better suited for that. I can't say that the county's looking at staffing that bridge 24/7 and putting scales out there, which would be required for some of those ideas. But I think they're looking at all options that are realistic to try to control the deterioration of that bridge moving forward. So
The last thing is there any update on the license plate reader? Is that going to get reinstalled anytime soon?
It should be. All the infrastructure is there in place. The pole's been installed, all that. I think it just needs to be connected. They have to coordinate with DTE to string the power over to it. I'm not sure where that stands. The police department's handling that. I can follow up on that. I don't know off the top of my head where exactly the utility aspect of it stands.
Heard a number of people asking about it. I think that's a good idea to get that back up running as soon as we can. But anyways, my comments tonight. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Greg, I got one thing to say about the bridge. Those 5 piers that you were talking about are as good as the day that they were put in. And the reason I know that is because I got my nose stuck in that bridge a little bit, and I became very close friends with the engineer on that project. And he has told me they've been down and they looked at those piers. He said they're in very good shape. And the piers that they repaired, they're all done and they're ready to go. And
Yeah, I believe the piers that they repaired are good. The ones that they didn't, though,
they're as good as the day they were put in. That's what the engineer told me.
I haven't seen the last report. I've read the other ones. They did note pretty significant problems with them as far back as the early 2000s. But I'm not trying to dispute what was told. You've heard. I would like to see the reports myself, though. I'm one of those trust but verify.
Even Derek was surprised at me, because here I found out a bunch of stuff before Derek found out about it.
Another thing, I consulted with 2 engineers that had nothing to do with county engineering. One of them is a very skilled engineer, big job, operated some nuclear facilities, and he indicated that any repairs could be done while the bridge would be in use after the main traveled hours. So if you're working underwater, so if you go from 10 o'clock until 6 in the morning. He could probably do some things like that. Second engineering expert that I consulted with, specifically the first one. And he was a very skilled guy with over 50 years worth of engineering experience. I used him as an expert more than once.
Yeah.
And he indicated that it was very doubtful that there would be serious deterioration below the water line with the original old 5 piers. And he explained why. So when I hear an explanation from the county, it's never really from them. They voice someone that they hired as an independent opinionator, whatever. And so I just don't always listen to what the county says, and I have specific information, which I'd love to share with you sometime.
Sure.
We don't need to tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
About other dealings that I've had with the county, and the situation was remarkable.
Well, I'll say I've heard a range of opinions about those other piers, and I've personally read the inspection reports dating back to the early 2000s, and the last one that I've read was the one that was done in November of 2020, and it rated those 5 piers in fair to poor condition. So, and that's consistent with it showed additional deterioration from previous reports. Now, that doesn't mean that isn't the same as critical. That doesn't mean that they're going to fall down or collapse or anything. But the fact that the load rating hasn't been changed does suggest to me that some engineers have thought that perhaps that's a factor. And you know, I personally, my opinion is that I support Trustee Jarecki's proposal to have the township hire a bridge engineer to help out, because I think you need some independent advice.
Of course.
Somebody who's a professional engineer who's going to sign their name to questions or memos or information that the township can hand to the county. And you can have 2 engineers with different opinions. That's fair. That happens. But when I hear about MDOT having different opinions from Wayne County, that concerns me. And you know, I think we definitely need to represent our interests, because no one's going to do it better than I-owners. So, okay, thanks.
Yes.
I have read some of the reports that Greg references, and I seem to recall, and again, we've already shown tonight that my memory isn't always quite on target, but conceptually it's good. But it was raising question about the condition of those 5 piers and saying that by December, before the bridge was opened up, that these things should be repaired. I actually read words to that effect. So there seems to be a variance of opinion. I don't know where that stands in there. I mean, you got one person versus another, but the attention here of you members to those bridges' concerns are appropriate. I just wanted to reaffirm that.
Okay, we have treatment plan manager's update. Ryan?
Hello, everyone. Sludge hauling will happen in May of this year. It's going to happen like it happened last year, and we're just waiting on the landfill situation, because our sludge hauler, he can't use the same landfill as last year, so he just has to look into that and resolve that. But it should not, it won't hold it up or anything. It won't be an issue. And that, the monthly contract fee at the township pays Suez is going to go up 4.3%, and that's just based on the inflation indexes, the CPI index and the ECI index. So Just want to let you know that. My items at the wastewater plant are, we have them in the budget, and they're all in there, and I've listed them all out, and so, yep. We are looking to hire. We do have an opening. You just have to be within 30 minutes of the plant. So, you know, if anybody's interested.
Oh, dirty jobs.
Yeah, just stop on by, you know. So, next week, Hamlet Environmental is going to come and measure primary tank number 1. As you know, last year we replaced primary tanks 2 and 3, and they're coming to measure that tank so we can lock in with the price for the equipment, which is important because with inflation and that, so we can lock that in.
So the intent with primary 1 is to handle it the same way we did with 2, 3, and then the finals, correct?
Exactly.
I mean, that would be our preference. So if you remember
Yes,
how we did
yep.
it last time, we bought the equipment and then bid out the installation. So rather than bidding out the installation and the equipment as a package, so, and we were able to save some money doing it that way. So that would be the similar. We're planning on doing that same thing for primary 1. So
That's about it. Does anybody have any concerns or
Elevator fix?
questions? No, it's not. I have tried reaching out to them multiple times and I get no response. So I'll keep moving on that, but I don't, so. And in the meantime, if we do have to move items up and down, it's not a real issue. We have an I-beam that we can use strap and a hoist, and we can move items if we need to. So it's not going to hold up any urgent maintenance or anything.
Brian, on your, oh, go ahead.
Gotta say, that's a bummer that we spend all that money, get all them cables changed, get everything done, and all that stuff, and now it don't work.
A lot of wasted money, and yeah, it's a shame. It really is. But
You didn't waste the money, you were told to spend it.
yeah,
For the inspector that said it had to be done.
Right,
that's what.
we
Yeah.
had no choice.
So
I'll get the inspector out there and say, hey, okay, let's get this going.
Brian, you seem to minimize the need for that elevator. You have a need to hoist things correctly, but you have
Yes.
a need for a specific, it being an elevator.
no, it doesn't have to be for human occupancy. It doesn't.
So possibly an answer would be to just
Yeah.
put in a better hoisting mechanism other than having to
Exactly,
strap
for
up.
just equipment, and then you don't have to have it, I guess with a real elevator you gotta have to have a license and inspections and that, but
I think that's
Yeah.
something, Derek and I spoke about this earlier today, that we probably ought to look into. Derek mentioned that possibly upgrading the HVAC system could help with the condition of the air there and minimize the corrosion that's eating up the elevator almost as fast as we can change parts. But I think along those same lines, we might want to evaluate whether we are by law required to have an elevator, and if not,
Exactly.
maybe we can look at a cheaper solution that would allow us to raise equipment up and down as needed in a more user-friendly manner and wouldn't entail all these extraordinary things that
Inspections
go
and
along with an elevator.
exactly, because you you have a hoistway there and everything. Why can't we just get something simple with a motor and a platform that just, raises items up and down? That would be safe and everything, but
I mean, you always think the next
Yeah.
fix is going to be the one that's going to fix it,
exactly.
but
And
oftentimes
we've
it
been
never
doing
does, and we
that,
just keep pouring money
which
into
is why
that
I
thing,
said
and it
just
hasn't been
stop
cheap.
that, because it, you can keep paying them and they'll just keep coming out, and that's enough, So, but yeah, we can look into that.
Right, I've had experience in small buildings where, like this, for instance, and mine was in a different building I was in for many years downtown. But only had 3 floors and underground parking, pretty good sized little building, was right on the river. And when our elevators first went into that, it was an old Detroit street and trolley barn repair facility and storage facility, so it was real old. And the renovation took place, and the elevators at first really didn't work right at all. And after a few months, we had good elevator guys. They'd come back, and I don't remember if it was Dover or who it was, but somebody came in, and after a couple of months, I mean, it was funny because you'd get stuck on the elevator and you'd yell up, tell the secretary, I'll be late because the elevator's stuck, and then eventually, so good elevator mechanics, there used to be a guy out here that lived at the south end, I think that's what he did. But good elevator mechanics ought to be able to figure that out, because if we've got the space and the structure, and I don't discount anything that Phil just said, or some of the other guys about a dumbwaiter type system or a lifting system.
Exactly.
But if we've already got everything in, what's the glitch? We need a different driver, mechanic, that's doing the mechanism working, because those things do work. This one here works pretty good in the township. There might be a corrosive element to the atmosphere internally inside the building. I don't know if that
And
enters
that eats
into
all
it
the
or it
equipment
doesn't.
up. We have to keep just replacing
Whatever
circuit
breaks,
boards just over
find
and
a
over.
bigger
Yeah.
one or whatever. There's been so much money spent, I don't even wanna hear the number tonight.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
if there's a better mechanic out there and we keep
Yep.
getting the same guy, it's like a baseball pitcher, if that guy keeps pitching
Yep.
home run balls to the other team, then you gotta pull him off the mound
Yep.
and trade him.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do.
Well, I think that elevator out there is a hydraulic elevator. It's run on a hydraulic shaft. And the one you got has got cables and stuff that go
The
around.
pulley and a
pumps
motor
things.
and exactly. And I think where it faults is it's this it's like a brain, and then it has these control panels. Well, the corrosive atmosphere just keeps on eating those up, and then if those goes, it won't run, and then we just have to keep replacing those. So it's not the right application for the wastewater. Has to be super hardened, like maybe sealed components, and that's not what we originally got. That's what I believe. So you almost have to have like an elevator engineer who knows, okay, for wastewater applications, and then we can look into that to see how much that would be, and then if it's just way too much, then we can just get something that just moves equipment up and down would be,
Well, I think it's something we have to look into and
you have to
decide
look into.
a direction
Yeah.
that we want to take with it, and maybe, like John says, let's get somebody to tell us why this thing keeps breaking.
Okay.
Obviously, it's,
I'm working on that. I'm gonna just keep on, I didn't
Another
leave.
thing, I know
Yeah.
that's a sophisticated facility there, so you have a lot of jobs to do, and you have to address them properly, environmentally, et cetera. But what are, say, a half a dozen plants within an easy drive of this place? What kind of elevator do they have? They have cables, do they have hydraulics, what do they have? What kind of sealed units do they have in their control boxes? And I gotta believe you wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. Somebody's got an elevator that's working right. And what kind is it? And I know that's kinda a
I
little
can
bit
ask around.
outside of your
Yeah, I
step.
could ask around some wastewater
Or go,
plants.
drive there, go
Yeah.
there.
Yep.
If you have the ability to do that, given your other time constraints.
I do. Yeah, I can do that. Sounds-
Brian, one other question. You had mentioned there was an issue with the bar screen, and Dupron's taking care of that?
Yes,
Or-
they are. Where the new chute was supposed to go through the concrete floor, we had that scanned actually this past week, and they found all these like electrical conduits in the floor there. So DuParon can't core drill their hole there now because we can't risk anybody hitting any electrical lines. So now it's all on DuParon again to either use the existing rag chute, which we have, either to make the diameter smaller, or it's on them again. But still, it's raking the rags. It's just that we have to manually remove the rags every day. So it's not disposing of the rags.
But they're on top of it?
Yes.
You're comfortable with
Yup.
what that they're
They
not
actually
just
have an
dropping it back on
engineer,
us?
and they actually have a DuParon engineer coming out to our site Thursday this week, and they're going to look at all their other options of that. And yeah, we're okay with removing the rags, just a little extra work, but it's what we got to do.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine. No, yep.
One thing, when Dupron came in and they gave us the first pitch, it was, this a custom guy, what was this, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yep,
Well, these
only 2
guys
years
do
ago.
this, and they're skilled, and this is a perfect fit for their skill level, and they have the custom equipment, they're gonna engineer, design it, it's gonna go in and it's gonna work good, and that was what, a couple years ago?
Yep. Exactly.
So,
Yep.
I mean,
2 years ago.
you can be
summer.
polite and tell a guy, you know, the township spent a lot of money on this, and you guys were the experts, unquote, and so,
Well,
what's going on?
we were, John, though, designing it somewhat out of their normal specs because of the physical constraints.
Eventually,
Yeah.
that appeared, and it had to do with, I don't know, the height of and
Right,
the heights and the
steepness.
angles.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when they went in and did their initial estimate investigation, you bring a ruler or a tape or whatever you need, and you should know what the roof is. So it's kind of like a combination of algebra and geometry, and those guys are skilled, and somebody's a skilled engineer in that crew, or many are. So it wasn't a surprise. Be different if we were doing like underground construction, you can't see it, you can't even investigate it or measure it, and all of a sudden you run into solid rock, then there's no way you could engineer that. You're gonna have some difficulties if you're under subsurface boring or something like that. But these guys, everything was in plain sight. And that's why plain sight is important, and that's usually why the 7-Eleven stores always put slippery, wet floor, 'cause they want you to read the sign. The floor might not be wet, but they want you to read the sign. And, you know, we didn't have any sign up. Those guys made their own judgment call.
They're sticking with us on it.
Well, and
Yeah.
and also the issue is,
They haven't ever ignored us.
Right.
and the issue isn't with the operation of the bar screen, it's the issue with the one component, which is the discharge chute.
It's like fitment.
Right, it's like the expelling the product is what the issue is, not actually with the operation of the unit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Because-
screens,
yeah.
you're manually sifting now.
Works good. It's just that for the amount of rags that we get, I don't think they ever took into consideration how many rags our plant gets versus a big plant. If it's a big plant, then the rags, when they dispose, they're going to move faster. Well, what happens is it takes a month for the rags to even make it out of the chute. So it gets so hard that it keeps, you know, it ruptures holes in the unit. But you would imagine that DuParon would have said, you know, okay, this is a smaller plant. We got to figure out how many rags you get. Okay, so we can't have our chute this long. with all these 90s and elbows, because it can't, by the time it starts moving, it's going to take months for it to make it, and then it just can't go because it's so, solid. But that's what they originally.
Elbows are always a big constraint when you're moving anything.
Exactly. So that's the problem, but they're on it, and they're on it, and they'll handle it. So.
I had one more question.
Yep.
The meter that you had, I think it's down in the front, in a pit. Is that the wastewater meter that you said was not working properly because it was?
Our effluent flow meter, which is
Yeah.
out there, and
Did you ever get that squared away?
No, we haven't, but we are looking into that with the AECO stuff.
That'll probably be rolled into the
But-
ACO stuff. Yep.
A huge project because you're going to have to replace that meter, which is on the pipe, which is on the ground. It's in that big vault. So you got to excavate that whole vault pipe and then pretty much put a whole new section of pipe in with
Well,
the meter.
the reason I'm asking
Yeah.
that because somebody told me that they might have something that would work. And I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I
Okay.
said, why don't you call him up and go over
Okay.
to the plant and talk to him?
Yeah. And we're having Rains is looking into all of our options with the meter that, is the most high-tech meter that we're not going to have this issue again. Actually, right now, we're just using our influent flow meter for,
Okay, well,
for all our loadings.
this person that
Yeah.
I'm in contact with, I'll have him get a hold
Okay.
of you.
At the plant, yeah, if they know of anything, yeah, our engineers can,
Hey, Ryan, on the project status report, NPDES permit for the wastewater treatment plant, we haven't received that yet, our most current one,
Nope.
have we? Okay, so we're still waiting on that.
Yeah, we're
Alright.
waiting on that. Yeah.
All right.
I submitted that maybe a year ago.
Okay.
So
All right, so it's just in process then. Okay.
Brian, without asking what specific dollar amounts we're talking about, when Dupron comes out, we're glad they're standing behind us. And there's probably some stuff under warranty, I don't know if the fitment is, but when they come out and they do another D-bend or whatever you'd say, change the
Yep.
angle on the 90s, then is it time and materials we're getting billed for that, or is there anything cost that they pick up?
no, it's all on them. I haven't seen any invoices, and I got
That's good.
email conversations, and it's my understanding it's all under warranty, and they're upholding that, and I haven't seen any invoices or.
That's important. Phil brought that out a minute ago.
Yeah, because that is important, because I'm pretty sure under our original contract that this, wasn't supposed to happen like this. I mean, it's a design engineering flaw that it's all documented that this thing hasn't worked right from the start, so, that should be, yep,
Is that it, Ryan?
all I got, yeah.
Thank you.
That little angel sleeping all night?
More and more, yes, yep.
More and more.
Yeah,
That's
we're getting
good.
a little bit of sleep, but it's.
I can tell that.
better. Yeah. That's great, yep. Thanks.
Okay, I think Derek explained why we deferred action item A for dust control, and the reasoning is that we may have the opportunity to bid dust bond, and we'd like to at least have that opportunity, so that's why that was deferred. I think everybody agrees dust bond was the preferred application for the dust control. Okay, so moving on, action item B is to look at our proposed schedule for the coming fiscal year. And I must admit, I did not check these dates to determine that they actually were the second Tuesday of each month.
They are.
They are? They've been checked, double checked, and,
I checked them on the calendar, yeah. so,
Okay,
but
all
I
right.
do make mistakes, but the, these these are what I saw on the
Okay.
calendar.
Just the date on the agenda should say April 12th then. On the agenda, says next meeting, should be April 12th.
Should be April 12th, so we
Yeah,
got that one
my-
wrong.
My bad. Yep.
Okay, thanks, Laura. So, if everybody is okay with those dates, we can entertain a motion to approve.
I will make a motion, we approve the meeting schedule for 2022 fiscal year.
22, 23. Okay, I'll support. So we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the agenda passes. Okay, now we have to elect our officers for next year. I spoke with Chairman Costick, and he is willing to serve as chairman for the upcoming year. I would be willing to serve as vice chairman unless anybody wishes to replace me.
Not replaceable, so.
Got it.
Okay. And Les, would you be willing to serve as secretary?
Yeah, I'll be willing to serve as secretary for another term.
Okay. So,
I'll move that as stated.
Support.
okay, we have a motion, we have support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
One thing I got to say about that.
What's that? Okay, duly noted. Okay, moving on, we have our manager's report. Derek?
Included in your packet is a summary that I put together that highlights a lot of the major points of our upcoming budget for DPS. Community development has been included in this summary, but obviously you guys don't handle community development. That's a general fund function. We only focus on drainage, roads, water, sewer, wastewater treatment plant, and refuse. So I'd like to go over kind of the highlights, and then we can get into some of the detail in the budget, line item by line item to that extent if you guys want to go through it in that amount of detail. If there's any opposition to that, or you have a difference of opinion as to how you'd like to go through the budget, please let me know.
Oh, that's fine with me.
Fine with that, let's kind of go through the, starting on page 29 of your packet, the drainage account. As the summary mentions, and as we had discussed at the last DPS meeting, the drainage account has budgeted capital improvements and major projects that include the 2 locations on West River Road, as well as our ditching project in the same budgeted amounts that we had in the previous year at $60,000. Same amount for drainage grants in a total of $75,000 for that project, or for those projects. And then we do have a placeholder in there of about $200,000 for additional projects that the DPS commission might choose to do throughout the year. That funding has been set aside for a large project that we can determine at a later date. Other than that, the drainage account, we try to keep majority of the operations within, the millage levy, but there is some fund balance that we count on for capital improvement projects, but we're at a pretty healthy fund balance in drainage, so that's really not an issue. Are there any questions about drainage at all and what's being proposed for next year? So the big ones in there is Manchester Woods, which we're working on right now, and then the 2 locations on West River Road. So those are going to be our big projects for next year, and they're actually currently ongoing right now, or at least have been authorized. For roads, it is a balanced budget. We try to once again keep our operational year-over-year expenditures within what the millage levy is, and that is your dust control, your snow removal, the priority service that we provide through the county has been included in the budget for next year. And after we fund all of the, basically the annual expenditures associated with maintenance, we have left over for the fiscal year about $111,000 in discretionary funds that we can use to work on roads, whether that's paving projects, crack sealing, concrete sectioning. That can be determined what projects we want to move forward with throughout the year. So we'll have to have subsequent conversations about that, but about $111,000 will be available for doing that work throughout the balance of the fiscal year. Other than that, some additional funding has been put in there for grass cutting, which I know was something we had discussed at the last DPS meeting as being a priority. So that funding has been allocated for that type of activity. And that was basically two seasonal employees to help out for 4 months, which would be in compliance with our collective bargaining agreement. We can't use those employees for full-time work outside of a seasonal, relationship. So that kind of mitigates the amount of that expense and the time that they can spend doing that work. So that's been accounted for within the roads budget. Yes.
End up changing back to dust bond, is it still gonna be within that 35,000?
That'll have to be a discussion with the commission. As far as cost, it's been a couple of years since we've gone through dust bond. Do you remember what those expenditures were about, John? Was it? Yeah. So that's going to have to be something that we're going to have to consider as a commission. 35,000 when this budget was put together was based upon 3 applications of calcium chloride at like $12,000 per application. So we might have to do some adjustments within our budget. If you do exceed 35,000, what ends up happening is, if let's say we went to 50,000, your discretionary expenditures would then go down to
112,000 goes down to 100. Got it. Okay.
whatever it ends up
All right.
being. So that's where that money would come from. You would just have less money to do paving or whatever we decided to do throughout the year. Okay, and there is some fund balance in roads, but that's why it shows. I'm looking on page 42, a reserve for capital improvements of 337, 585. 100,000 of that, or 111,000 of that, is the balance from this year, and there is some fund balance there as well. So, and she's just added that in within this budget. Okay. As far as water rates and the water account, we are projecting reduced consumption for next year. Based upon our trends, we've been going down each year. We're moving the estimated consumption from 255 million gallons for this year, which was budgeted this year, to 251 million gallons, a reduction of about 4 million gallons in sales, and that's based upon trends. People are using less water. We're projecting less water consumption for next year, and that has an impact on our revenues, obviously. We did receive about a $39,000 increase in costs from GLWA for next year. That was our rate increase from GLWA. The modification of the rates for next year are being proposed in this budget from $11.68 per unit to $11.84 per unit, and based upon the consumption revision, the only allocation or difference from this year to last year is enough to account for the $39,000 increase from GLWA, which has been the practice of the commission and the board as long as I can recall. You'll see when you take a look at the overall budget for water, the actual revenue projection, even with the increase, is less than what it was last year, and that's primarily because of consumption reduction. So,
Eric, one question on the consumption. Is that curve increasing in slope or lessening in slope? I mean, at some point it's going to bottom out.
yeah.
The usage, people aren't going to just quit using water until they use none.
Right. I mean,
In that trend going.
off the top of my head, the slope is shallower than what it was before. I
Okay.
think the reduction in consumption from like 2010 to 2018 or 2019 was more significant. We were up around 310 million gallons in 2010. The difference from year to year is, shallower now, maybe 3-4 million gallons per year versus maybe, 10 at a certain point. Hopefully that answers your question.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
where
at
the-
some point, it's gonna
Right.
bottom
You
out.
would think people working from home, it would be more.
Yeah, you would think. And you've seen a lot of that type of,
If you don't leave your house, there may not be a need to shower all the time.
I mean, there's all sorts of
Another-
reasons,
yeah, that's a good point.
yeah. Okay.
Last year, we did have some fund balance that was added into the water account from a revenue standpoint. That's page 31. We're not anticipating using any fund balance next year. We're also not anticipating doing any real significant projects for next year. So I'm looking at page 32 of the budget. We have all of our personnel costs that are in here. We did have some movement on some personnel over previous years. So we do actually have one new employee, but it's not above and beyond the 3 that we've always carried. And that individual has been working with us for about a month, a little less than a month now. So there is some revision in cost associated with that, but this is comparing to last year, which we had a fairly new employee at that point too as well. So it's not that different. As far as major items for the water account, we do have some funding for the water system asset management plan, which we're required by the state to do, which piggybacks on our sewer asset management plan. But the cost differential, or the cost difference as compared to our sewer asset management plan, is far less, because a lot of the work that we did with our sewer asset management plan can be utilized within our water asset management plan. So we're really looking at only about $113,000 for that water asset management plan. So that's been budgeted for. Our typical costs associated with maintenance repair for our water main breaks, that's all been budgeted for the upcoming year. And there is some sub-notes that are in the budget on page 33 that aren't necessarily accurate, and those need to be changed in the final budget. For example, capital improvements for buildings and whatnot, it's substantially less than last year because those items are no longer included that are listed in that budget. We have seen over the past couple of years a substantial increase in meter repair and replacement cost, and John, maybe you want to talk a little bit about that, but the trend has been on an upward slope for those cost parameters. And
when we did our original meter replacement program, that was 2006. So a lot of those meters and the radios that read those meters are wearing out. So we had a 20-year warranty. We're at 16. So a lot of the radios are needing to be replaced. So instead of just changing the radio, we're going to start incorporating the register as well. So they have a one-piece unit now where the radio's attached to the register itself. So that it's a little bit increase in cost, but it should get us another 20 years. And then also the supply chain, as everybody knows, I tried to order some meters recently. They're looking at 13 to 16 weeks. So we need to get some on order and keep them in stock.
if you look at page 37 or 34, I'm sorry, you'll see the majority, or not the majority, but there are a number of bonds that mature in 2025. Based upon the budget that we have, without a substantial increase in rates that would fund any new bond issuance, I think the plan, the strategy would end up being, or should end up being, going through our next round of water main replacements once these bonds mature in 2025. So we got a couple of years here before we can do a real large water main project until these mature. If there's a difference of opinion on the commission, obviously we can talk about that, but we got plenty of time to do that. But that's really kind of what the finances show you, unless we're looking at substantial increases to fund new bond issuance. So that's the water account. Not a huge difference from last year. Kind of status quo for the work that we performed last year is what we're planning on doing next year. So, any questions about that? A sewer account. There is a proposed rate adjustment for the sewer account, and that's primarily just to account for the reduction in consumption. We base our sewer charges off of the consumption of the water, You'll see the footnote in the budget on page 35. It's 255 million gallons. The number here under the total line 1.109, that's actually based upon 251, so that needs to be changed. That's 251 million gallons. To be able to maintain or come close to revenue projections or revenue that we had generated last year, we're proposing a rate modification from 424 per unit to 442 per unit to assist with the reduction in the consumption. So that's one big note on the revenue side of things, as well as previous year's resources. Last year we had budgeted almost $1.2 million coming out of fund balance to fund capital improvements at the wastewater treatment plant. We didn't actually realize the full expenditure of that 1.19. We actually were quite a bit below that. But next year we're anticipating about $500,000 coming out of fund balance to assist with capital improvements of the wastewater treatment plant. That account, our fund balance there sits right around $3 million. So we're still pretty healthy as it comes to, fund balance within the water account or in the sewer account. Any questions about revenue on the sewer side of things? If not, as far as the sewer account goes, we do have the continued SAW grant expenditures. I apologize. The work that the SAW grant, is intended to do. That's the sewer asset management work that we've been working on. That's the continued expenditure for that, for this year's work, as well as engineering costs associated with, doing the cleaning, the review of the tapes. All that's been considered within the budget. And all of that is down on page 36 under maintenance, main repair, cleaning and televising, TV review, PACP, asset management plan. All that counts for about $333,000 for the upcoming budget. We do have some capital outlay for repair and replacement, $90,000, which is a slight reduction over last year. Actually, not a slight reduction, a pretty large reduction from last year. But that's based upon the expenditures that we've realized over the past couple of years in that account. So, other than that, we do have some bonds that mature in 2026. So, as we move through the asset management plan that will establish a capital improvement schedule for us, we'll have to figure out the finances of all that. As that work ends up coming to completion. So, other than that, the sewer account, at least from the sewer network system, not a whole lot of difference from last year. Okay. The sewer revenue that we charge on the water bills also goes to support the wastewater treatment plant. So, if you take a look at page 38, that's where that those charges come into play. Ryan had mentioned that there are some, we have a current contract with Suez, and there are basically contractually obligated increases that we see each year. You'll see when Ryan had mentioned 4% or a little over that when he had talked about it in his presentation, you'll see the difference from last year's 3%. The dollar figure for 2021, 2022 that was in the budget wasn't it wasn't quite that for what we're paying them. So the 464 696 is 3% more than what it was in 21-22, but the amount in 21-22, the actual cost was less than that. So the difference you see for next year is 4% or whatever their rate increase was over their actual expense for 2021. The budgeted expense was a little bit higher than what the actual was. So hopefully that makes sense. We do have a little bit of an increase in sludge hauling cost over last year. And that really, what it boiled down to was last year's sludge hauling expense was a bit more than 105. And the reason being was the price can change depending upon the quantity of sludge they take out of the plant. The quantity of sludge they take out of the plant is dependent upon when they do the hauling. So the fuller the tanks, so the later in the year, the fuller the tanks, the more they take out. So last year we didn't do sludge hauling, I don't think, until May or June. So the tanks were at like 95%. So they took out more than what they had in the previous year when we actually had done it earlier. So there's a little bit of a, estimate there that goes on, because you really don't know what that total cost is gonna be based upon the quantity of sludge that's in the tank.
Like a 15-month cycle instead of a 12-month.
Exactly. So theoretically, you should have less if they do it the same time this year or earlier than they did it last year. So there's it's not an exact science, I guess is what I'm saying. So we put a little extra money in there for that. Capital improvements, down towards the bottom of the sheet on page 38. These are all improvements that we've done a consultation with both our engineers and also the operator about things that need to be done next year, and that's where this list comes out of. And Ryan had mentioned in his presentation, all the items that he wanted to see included have been included as far as his understanding of the things that need to be done at the plant. If you remember, we talked at the last meeting about putting a placeholder in there for the elevator. There is some money in there for that, and that's kind of a shot in the dark. We may or we may not spend that for next year, depending upon, what we find out or what we decide is the best strategy, with that. But at least there's some money available to address that if we want to or if we have to. Okay. Any questions about the plan? Refuse rates remain the same as last year, so there will be no adjustment in refuse rates. We were paying for bridge tolls for our trash trucks to go across the toll bridge. We don't anticipate that in this year's budget, and that's about a $27,000 cost savings. So refuse actually is in a pretty good shape financially, where we'll be able to actually put some money into fund balance from refuse to the tune of about $27,000, and that's on page 40. So what we've done in the past, if we do have a fund balance, we reallocate that back to the expense, to avoid having to raise rates. So, that's kind of the plan, I guess, here. When we do end up realizing a increase in costs that exceeds revenue, we can draw on that fund balance to liquidate it and avoid an increase. So we're actually in really good shape with refuse for this year. And with that, that's the end of the budget for the different accounts that we have under our purview. Are there any questions or concerns? Or did I bore you to death?
No, not at all.
Probably the third or fourth time the treasurer has heard this budget as recently as yesterday. So was the last time. So.
Thank you, Derek.
All right. Water loss report. Through January, we were at 11.634%. And that's the most recent billings that we have that are complete to be able to provide to you. So.
That's pretty good even with water being great.
Yes. Yep. Project status report under my report. There's a memo that's included in your packet that provides an update on a variety of different projects that we have going on within the DPW department. And John, you want to help me out with this, you're more than welcome to, but the water main work on Meridian, that's all but complete. We just have some restoration to do. Sanitary sewer televising. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
I'm actually meeting with them tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. so we can get started on. There's a few pieces that were missed through going through the country club. So we're gonna have to get with the country club and find out when the best time to access that location is going to be. I don't believe it's going to happen now because the ground's starting to unthaw and there's no way they could drive out there now.
Yeah, and I had talked to them about that. They had called me earlier in the week, just not to get off point here, but I think I had expressed to them it would have been good to do it during the winter time when it was frozen, but their issue with that was, running their jetter and having everything freeze up was their concern. So I think we had talked about maybe trying to do that in late August when it's dry and, the ground isn't saturated, and try to coordinate with the club as it relates to what days of the week are, the least busy for them to try to work that out. So, West River drainage improvements. So that contract in the contract extension or the change order was awarded by the board. The permit application or permit extension has gone into the county. I signed the paperwork the other day to add that second location on. The only issue that we have is really we need to see those bridge limits adjusted to be able to start that project, because to be able to get some of the equipment and material over to the island, we need to have an increased limit on the bridge, especially the paving work that has to be done over there once the project is complete. So we would like to see the bridge limits adjusted before they start, so that we know that they've been adjusted, so we don't have an open cut sitting there that, or at least a non-restored project location or project site that can't be paved because we can't get material over. So that, between that and the permit, that's what we're kind of waiting on to get those things started. So
Just a question, Derek. What is the load limit currently on the toll bridge?
10 tons, 12 tons?
12. Okay, so
So once the Free Bridge, the Wayne
still
County
much
Bridge,
more than double that at the
right,
current.
once the Wayne County Bridge opened, the toll bridge reduced their limits. Yep. Essentially putting us in a worse condition than we were before, because the toll bridge was 36 tons.
Right, that's what I was thinking. They didn't stay there, though.
Right, so now we have 26 tons where, a year ago we were at 36 ton. So,
That's what I was thinking. We could pay a toll and bring 10,000.
nope, can't. So, yeah. So we need to, see those adjustments take place so that we can do some of the things that we have planned, okay? HVAC lab unit, we talked a little bit about that, and the overall HVAC system at the plant. That's something that we're looking at rolling into the ACO. I had a phone call the other day regarding the ACO work and some modifications to the final design that was submitted to Eagle that Eagle wanted to see, but none of it was overly burdensome. There were just some changes on some of the prints that needed to be provided to Eagle, and that's all on the engineers to provide that, especially from their cost. We won't get any more bills. They submitted a final design to Eagle, and if there are changes, that'll be on their dime if they weren't compliant with what Eagle wanted to see. So, we're going to have to start talking here fairly quickly about, the upcoming, election cycle or ballot cycle for those bonds. I think we've got a pretty good idea, pretty good handle on the cost, because we're not only dealing with some ACO stuff, but we also have some other state mandated improvements that we're rolling into the ACO, as well as some maintenance items that we're going to roll into that, bond. So we'll need to talk about that in depth here fairly soon, probably within the next month and a half, and the township board's going to have to be part of that conversation as well, because we need to make sure we're staying on track with what the state mandates as far as bidding, contracting, construction start, construction completion. So, all that's dependent upon securing funding to be able to meet those deadlines, and so we're going to have to start talking about that pretty in depth here fairly shortly. Asset management plan, they continue to work on that for the wastewater treatment plant, so nothing real new there. We meet probably every month and get updates from Fishbeck, who's doing the asset management plan. Once again, I think I mentioned to you, once that's all complete, we'll have a very in-depth conversation and meeting with the DPS commission to go over kind of the results of that, because there's all kinds of different components to it, from a asset management list, schedule, funding, proposals, things of that sort that you guys have to be aware of. Ryan spoke about the NPDS permit application, and other than that, John, do you have anything to add?
Everything's been going well at the DPS. We, as Derek mentioned earlier, we got our new employee in about a month ago, Rob Ponder. He's working out well for us, so it's great help to us. The drainage project on the Manchester drain has been on hold for a couple of weeks. There was a mechanical issue. He's hoping to be back to work next Monday. Again, I'm meeting with Safeway tomorrow regarding the televising and cleaning. We'll probably start a little bit earlier depending on the weather before the April 1st kickoff of Phase 5 this season. Let's see. And water main breaks, we've been averaging about one a week for the last month. Other than that, everything's going great.
That concludes my report. John, you got anything else under your report? Okay.
Okay. Does anybody have any discussion items they wish to bring up? I have none. And I have no chairman's report. And we can go around the table and ask any commissioners for any comments. Les?
Surprisingly, I have nothing tonight.
Nothing further at this time.
Laura?
I'll second Les.
Okay. David?
And, well, I just want to mention that, as John said, Mr. Ponder was approved by the board as a new hire for DPS. The Detroit Great All ditching at Manchester Woods was approved. The change order, Derek mentioned the change order on the West River Drainage Project was approved. And we also approved Gullet for the sludge hauling. And I believe scheduled for this coming meeting was dust bond, or the dust control. I believe it's on there, so we'll have to pull it on there. And that's it.
That's it?
April 12th.
So that concludes our business for this evening. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Our next meeting will be April 12th.
It's a Tuesday, right?
I hope so.
Okay.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I will second it.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned.